Jesus Christ. It's too cold. One second. I don't know if other people have this problem, but I seem to never be able to put on the right amount of clothing when I'm going outside. Right amount of legs are freezing. My legs are freezing, and I do have like basically ski pants, ski underwear. I could have put that on. I didn't know I was gonna need it because I can never get it right. I actually thought of making an app where you could uh, track at what temperatures and at what wind conditions, what kind of weather did you feel comfortable with what clothing inside and outside. So like I remember in Spain it was 19 degrees and no wind, and I was like, oh, this is perfect even with a t-shirt or a shirt. So it's like perfect temperature for me. I found I always thought my perfect like ideal temperature outside would be like 20 something degrees, but no, I noticed, and then I thought, well, I should keep track of that more because now I know at 19 degrees, no, full sun, no wind, I know that I can wear a t-shirt and shorts, or I can wear dress shirt and pants, no problem. And then I know if it's slightly warmer, I'd have to wear the shorts only. But then it gets tricky because usually when you go outside, the temperature will drop, right? So if you go like right now, it's sunset, almost. I don't know if you can see that. Um, so it's probably gonna be 40 minutes until the sun drops, and then the temperature will drop quickly. Plus, the heat transfer from the sun will be gone, and that also influences the real feeling of the temperature, right? If it's cloudy versus sunny, it's gonna feel different because apparently light rays hitting you get turned into heat when it like hits you. Does that make sense? I learned this recently. I thought that it was like that we could feel the heat from the sun, that like waves of heat were coming onto us. That's not how it works. It's only transferred. It's only converted into heat when it hits us. That's blows my mind. Anyways, I guess this is my new podcast setup. I did bring my big boy mic, and I might try that, but this is simpler, and it works. And this one has a tiny wind muff, um, which my other one doesn't. I'll show you. Brought the whole thing here. This is Velcro, so I could just put it like that. That didn't work. That did not. God damn it. This is stupid if I try again. It has a clip, so I'll just clip it. There you go. Ah. Great. So yeah, I actually brought. So I thought amidst all these quarantine people staying at home, like we're not really supposed to stay at home as much as like we're just not supposed to be with people more than 10 people. It's not permitted. Gatherings of 10 people, and what else? Shops, restaurants have to close. And if you have symptoms, you have to self quarantine and not leave your home. But I'm healthy so far, no symptoms at all. I'm still taking my distance from people. And I could come here without any worry that anyone would be near me. So here it is. So I brought this, and I might try it right now, but the problem is it doesn't have a windshield, really. It has a. This shield is for plosives, I think. So when you make a P sound, your mouth makes a tiny air wave, and if that hits a microphone, it'll make a nasty sound. So that's what this is for. It also works with wind, but as you can see, it only covers the front end where you speak into it. The wind is coming from that way. But I did bring this. Ow, ow. Why am I getting shocked? What? Did bring this, which is I use this actually to transfer my tech around safely. It's actually, I think it's for soundproofing stuff. But I just needed foam, and it was the cheapest foam I could find from China. Rest in peace, ordering stuff from China. I haven't done that since for about a month or so. Although I'm sure I could. Look, this. Oh my god, it's so cold. My legs are. I'm freezing my butt off. But look, this could work actually. Put this here. Okay. So now it's here. Fold over. And voila. It's too big, isn't it? Do I even have the stuff I need to plug it in? Did I even bring a cable for the microphone? I can record it to the computer. Sure, I'll record to the computer. Since I need it on. Anyways, holy shit, it's cold. Okay. Well, I came prepared. Slightly prepared. Brought my coffee. Only slight problem is I can't see. Whoops. I can't see the monitor of my camera because I have a Sony, which means I don't know if it's recording anymore. I mean, it should be, but there's a 30-minute recording limit on most digital cameras that also do video. And even though my camera is like a... God damn it. This is not working. So even though my camera is actually a quite expensive mirrorless camera from Sony that is specialized in video. It's specialized in a way that it only has 12 megapixels, which is bad for photos, of course. Makes it a bad hybrid camera. But that's better for video because each pixel on the same size sensor, each pixel on a 12 megapixel sensor is larger, has a larger area than on a 24 megapixel sensor, for example. Which means it does better low light. It grabs more light information per pixel. So less pixels, better pixels. I'm really tense. I should do this. Can do this. So the reason, God damn it, it fell off again. The reason this mic sticks to my fingers, to my gloves, is I put Velcro on anything so that it's easy to like attach and detach. Like this cable, I have a Velcro tie on it. So when I'm at my desk, under my desk there's some Velcro, and I can hide all cables by just doing this, putting on there, and then only the usable part is above the table. Pretty smart. Low tech, but pretty smart. I also do that with my microphone, so when I'm not using this, I can stick it on top of my camera, and if I need it, I'll just grab it. And not to brag, but it's pretty smart. I thought about doing magnets for most of my stuff, but I realized most of my stuff is technology, it's electronics, and that won't work. That combination is bound to make some kind of issue, some kind of like with the microphone. I don't know if a magnet next to a microphone is a good idea. Maybe it'll make some kind of interference or something, and I don't know. I just think Velcro is fantastic, or hook and loop tape if you want the cheaper kind that is not branded. Cheers. So Let me just get my scarf in here and find my phone, because I thought that on my phone I could do some find some of my thoughts. So for the past, I made a video about my thoughts document over 2 years ago when I started it, and I still use it to this day. It's pretty cool. I'm about to, fuck, this is not gonna work. I'm giving up on you, man. Okay, like we're learning here. We're learning that, you know, just every mic has an advantage and disadvantage. No mic is perfect, and this one, even though it's the closest thing that I have to perfect, because it's wireless and I love wireless stuff. God damn it! It's not perfect. This wind muff keeps going off, and it's clipping this on clothes will make the clothes fold because it has more weight than a regular. There it goes again. Than a regular lavalier mic. What was I saying? So right. So my thoughts document. So made this document 2 years ago. Made a video about it as well. And I still use it. I still use it to write down anything where I'm confused, like where I should write it down. I know I need to write it down, but I don't know where. I'll just go to this one document. So instead of having, most people use the notes app or something on their phone, or they will write it on a piece of paper. But I found that if I collect it in one document, in one big ass document, I make one each year. Then I can do some searches. Then I can do some searches and find patterns. So, I mean, one thing I use it for is finding out what problems I experience over and over. Now, let me get some coffee. There we go. And I do that because if I have a problem and I write it down and then it reappears, I might already have solved it before and just forgot. So as I'm writing it down the second, third time, I might do Control F to search the document for any previous thoughts that has any of the keywords, like anger or video editing or music or free time. I wish I could give you better examples, so I would need to open my phone to do that first. Next time I'll put on ski underwear so my butt doesn't freeze. So let me open my document here, and let's take a look at some of my thoughts. And as I said, it's an alternative to using a notes app here and a piece of paper there, and some people have a diary or journal. This doesn't really replace. It doesn't replace all of them, so I'm making another kind of system to track more specific useful things. Like I want to figure out is there any patterns in what I worry about? Is there any patterns in what I is there any patterns are there any patterns in what I like doing? And basically just anything that I think about a lot. Are there any of that? And what I have done with this document is use some word analysis apps, and these take a look at all the words in the document, and then I forget to breathe. I don't know why. And then you get an overview of what are the most frequently used words and how positive versus negative is your language. And I've used that to kind of get a feeling for like overall how much do I note down positive and negative things. Um, right. So some quotes going here. The latest one is, if it can be summed up in 3 lines, it'll be a success. But if it can be summed up in 1 line, it'll be a blockbuster. It was from a video I watched yesterday, and it's from a channel called Samir, who are really great. And one thing I hate about watching good videos is that I forget if I learned anything from them. So, as I am trying to track more of my life, I am I'm trying to also make sure that I'm not wasting my time on anything. So, by default, I think that any time spent on YouTube is wasted, but of course it's not. It's very mixed. And the reason that I think that is, I can't remember what I learned from most of the YouTube videos I watched. So some exceptions are like tutorials, where I've watched some tutorials because I got a new thing, like a new camera, and then I learned how to use the camera. Fine, that's fair enough. That's obvious. But what about videos like that, where there was like a nice quote, a nice takeaway, or a video that changed my view, or changed some of my goals, and then I forget about it. I want to avoid having forgotten what I picked up from the stuff I consumed, because that way I'll more accurately know if I actually waste my time on YouTube. Maybe it's more like 50-50, maybe it's even more productive than that. But when you just track your time and look at the overview of what apps and programs you used and what websites you used, you don't really get an explanation for what specific YouTube videos did you actually watch, unless you go in and take a look, and that would be very, very time consuming. So this is a better way. The idea would be to kind of like, I actually made a book summary system, kind of a book note system. Basically a document of a template that I would fill out on any book. Oops, on any book that I would read. I made this little document, and it was far too extensive for most books, but it had questions like what's the takeaway that you can use in your life from this book? Like, what specific situation in your life do you think you'll use some of the lessons from this book? So my book system I abandoned because mainly I stopped reading, but also the system was too much work. It needs to be more intuitive. I did highlight a lot when I read books, and then what I would do is put in a calendar, like a week after I read the book, I would go through all my highlights and delete all the redundant ones. Like, if I marked the same kind of idea twice, I would remove it the second time, so it only was in my notes once. Problem was, going through all your highlights in a book, if you're not very, very disciplined, is super hard. It's super long. I would have pages and pages of just highlights from a book, and I can go back now and get a good idea of any book or any of the valuable pieces I found in books. And I'm of course talking about nonfiction books that I was mainly reading, but it was such work. yeah, it basically failed, but the idea was good. And so for a lot of the other media that we consume, we don't really think to take notes. Um, like I do watch a lot of non-fiction YouTube, if you can call it that. Like a lot of lifestyle and productivity and just advice based. If you don't apply it right away, like if you don't, if you're not like, say you're watching a shaving tutorial, if you're watching that an hour or sorry a week before you get your safety razor or whatever, and you're thinking you'll learn now and then you can do it in a week, it's much more effective to watch the tutorial as you're about to shave, right? So a few minutes before or during your shaving. Um, uh, but sometimes you're just curious on a topic. Um, like you want to learn, just like I have the full Adobe software CC package, the whole thing, right? And I pay for that. My sister and me split it, and it's a student pack, and it's still expensive, I think. But considering how buggy it is, but there's some amazing software in there. There's some amazing capabilities, and it's super fun to just learn how, like, what are you able to do in Premiere and in Photoshop, and in After Effects, and in all these different software. So, I don't think, um, like I felt like the quote is from Tim Ferriss, I think, or maybe he re-quoted it from someone else. But here I go. Learn just in time rather than just in case. Uh, learn when it's needed, like as you're shaving, or as you're making coffee, or following a recipe. Recipe example is much better example. Because most people don't really remember recipes that well. Me neither. I have to use it when I have to use it. Like I have to watch the recipe as I'm cooking. Unless I've done it before and I've applied it so that I kind of remember because I've done it. And that's how you remember, right? Um, application. I keep getting out of breath. This is pathetic. So the learning just in time rather than just in case does miss out on one thing, and that's just curiosity and inspiration. And I do think that I've learned a lot about what I want from watching tutorials, like watching breakdowns of music videos and why and how they made certain things work. That has just opened my eyes to what I might want to do, right? And I wouldn't have done that if I had the principle of learning just in time rather than just in case. Because I wasn't about to make a music video. I was just browsing the catalog of what are the options in the world. And so I think for especially young people like myself, it's not an ideal philosophy. Learning, like, you can spend way too much time learning stuff you'll never use, for sure. And your curiosity will never be satiated. You'll always be more curious. And I'm still shocked at how many weird things I know how they work. Because if you follow channels like SciShow and stuff like that, and you learn so much random stuff that you might never need. Of more than a quiz night, and someone asks what's the which kind of volcano has a high silicium, what do you call it, content, and then you say, "Oh, I know that because it's more fluid. The lava is more fluid, so it goes further, so it's flatter." So that's the other one, right? You just learn this stuff for seemingly no reason. Is that good or bad? Bruh, you gotta for just random trivia, I would say you gotta weigh that against other what else you could be spending your time. Um, uh, just in the entertainment category or in the learning category. I mean, using your brain, that's nice. That's different than watching a movie or a TV show. So it has to be more valuable, right? In the end. But you could also be playing a piano or trying to code your just a simple app, right? So you got to weigh it against that, I think. And well, the problem is for me and a lot of people, maybe we've spent too much time just learning stuff that we never will need, knowing that we'll never need it. Now, so the music video example is different because that was something like, I don't know if I want to like. Actually, I never liked music videos, so the fact that I would go into this is odd. Um, I did watch a lot of MTV just in the background, so I was exposed to a lot of music videos, a lot of in the crappy area. I would say in the in the early 2000s, music videos were weird, and I think now in 2020 or in 2019, music videos are awesomely made, and they don't have to make them. You don't sell more necessarily. It's all I think for the art, and that gets me excited. Is it's all the interesting parts of filmmaking you get to use, and for the artists as well, they can like express a deeper, like another dimension, really, of the song, of the track, by having a music video rather than just an audio or audio file or a concert experience. So that kind of learning, um, that's valuable. Um, so I gotta chew on this one. So what happens when I watch a tutorial about a music video for the first time, how they made a music video, breaking it down, and I love it? Then what happens is I might put it into my thoughts document. So going back to the point is I should do that more. I should do that with most with the videos I watch, and actually sum it up in a sentence or two, the takeaway. And sadly, this might be a bad signal of the quality of content on YouTube, but sadly, I do tend to find a tutorial that I want to watch, right? Uh, like a tip video. Usually it's the tips videos. And then if you just scroll down to the comments, some guy will have summed up the video in 3 simple points, and you don't have to watch the whole thing. So as a content creator, you want to avoid your videos being able to be distilled that simply if you're trying to give advice, because no reason you're gonna blabber for 10 minutes if there's something people can take away just by a few bullet points. But that being said, something like a book summary, to take an extreme example, a book summary does not replace reading a book, and you could get the same ideas from the book summary, but it won't stick the same way to your brain if you don't get the stories, and that's how you learn, right? Like especially if it's principles. So if an example is if you're watching a video about some tips in a career path you want to go down, for me is might be something like videography, right? And then you go and watch a video of a professional in that industry giving 3 tips on how to blah, right? Um, three three steps you have to take to advance in this specific career, right? You can still do the thing I was talking about, right? Going down to the comments, go down to the comments and see number 1, number 2, number 3 from some comment. I think some creators even delete those comments to avoid people scanning or skipping the video. But that is not gonna replace watching the video, because the video in this case might have a story from the professional explaining the situation, explaining the reasoning, and maybe having a practical example. It might be something like remember to make a contract, right? You'll hear that a lot if you're getting clients for their first time, or working with other businesses. Remember to make a contract. And if you just read that in a bullet list, like, yeah, sure, I know that already. But when it comes down to it, you might not apply it because it doesn't seem that important still, right? You're much more excited about getting the client and getting the money and doing the work and getting experience. But then you missed out on the point, and the point might be in that video still, right? In the meat of the video, and that's why it's a 10-minute video, not a 3-item bullet list. The point is that he might have a story about how not having a contract screwed him over for months and wasted a lot of his time, and maybe he went into a lawsuit and ended badly, and that whole thing. So I guess that kind of sums up my point. And the book summary idea is so applicable as well. I used to use book summaries as a pre-book reading exercise, both to learn more about the book's contents and if it's for me, because those book summaries are like 5 minutes, so I'd rather watch that than read about what the book is about, and then get an overview, right? So they're not completely a waste of time. And then I would also be able to skip books by, instead of starting to read it, instead of that, just learning up front that it's not for me. I'm not going to be here for much longer. I just felt like going out and rambling about some stuff. So, next up for me, I think, is making a... And funny thing is, like, it's only a few days ago where I was browsing one of the subreddits that I follow for tracking a life, quantify itself, Lifetracking, life logging, those subreddits, I think they're called. And I saw this post about, like, oh, here's a system for tracking all the media you consume. And I was like, why? And as late as yesterday, I had to tab open it, and I'm still like, but why? Like, not like a douchebag. Why? Just like literally, why would you need that? Why would you need to know what a YouTube video you watched 5 years ago was about? And now I see it. Now I see the reason. The reason is, there's a few reasons. One is it keeps you accountable to not consume crap. Second, it makes sure that if you're starting to consume crap, you realize halfway, you realize you'll have to sum this video up and that it's not valuable. So instead of watching it all or skipping through it, you'll just completely skip it. And that's harsh, but you gotta respect your time. And it's tricky on YouTube because there are some different strings pulling different ways, right? So YouTube, I think a lot of people realize now. YouTube wants videos that are 10 minutes longer, or the creators, I guess, want 10 minutes or longer because of the ability to place more advertisements, and it'll make more watch time, which is good for the algorithm, etc. And for something like a Premiere, Adobe Premiere, my video editing software, for something like software tutorials, I really think it's done a sort of bad influence on the how long it takes to deliver a message. I'm saying that as I'm stumbling through these words, right? This is a different format, forgive me. And I'm freezing. But it's made tutorials a lot longer than it should be, right? You'll see a 10-minute video about one thing, and then you'll see the same thing covered in 1 minute. That's one of my favorite YouTube channels that never get touched by the algorithm because it's called Adobe in under a minute, or Adobe in 1 minute or something. All these 1 minute channels, they don't have a lot of success off the bat because they're so short, right? But honestly, all these things in software, you just want a clear-cut answer to a specific question. How do I do this? And sometimes that requires 10 minutes. Most of the time, though, is 1 or less. On the other spectrum, like, you have these podcast pieces, which are amazing because they don't replace. You're not sitting down. You're not sitting down and looking at a podcast or actively listening to. I mean, you're actively listening, of course, but you might. One thing is you might be doing something else. Another thing is you can listen to it while you couldn't do anything else, like when you're commuting or doing other stuff, and it might just it might just open your options basically. It's a different format, so I think maybe some creators will realize that podcasts and live streams and such are a good format for different kinds of learning. Stuff like um, classes and what do you call it? Workshops? Workshops. Um, you just build them differently. And I don't know much about how to teach the best way online, but I know that at one of the best, rather two of the best sources of knowledge I've gained from about learning Adobe Premiere. One was the 1 minute YouTube channel that I just talked about, Adobe in a minute. And the other I still think about sometimes is this workshop that was on Creative Live, which was sent live. I couldn't rewind or pause or anything. And it wasn't short, it was several hours. But it was so useful. And even if it was several hours, it was packed so concisely, surprisingly, with valuable information. Now, unfortunately, that usually only applies to, like, when you're a beginner of something, because teaching gets tricky when different students have different levels of prior knowledge. So some functions in, for example, Premiere or Photoshop require you to understand another thing, like masking. And if you understand masking and effects, then you can learn this cool masking effect. But without them having to explain how to do the first two things. But if the teacher realizes that their audience don't know, um, or most of them don't know this up front, they'll have to go through it. And then some students will sit there and have to skip through, because it's stuff they already know. So I'm gonna end this with no conclusion, like a cliffhanger. But there's no cliff. And yeah, I'll just say this: have a happy quarantine. Matane.